All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's Wednesday at 10. We're going to start with this song, You Are the Vine. There's some music sheets right there if you need them. Nice little chorus. Based on the teachings of Jesus asking us to abide in Him and Him abiding in us. You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you. You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you, and we'll grow in your love, and we'll go in your name, that the world will surely know that you have power to heal and to save. You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you. You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you. Let's pray. God, thank you for offering us the opportunity to be a part of you, for you to be a part of us. We know that you have taught us so many different ways that we are connected to you, that you love us, that your love is in you, that your presence is with us and in us and around us. Continue to convince us, Lord, we pray. Continue to help us to give ourselves over to that truth, that reality, so that we can experience the life that you have created for us. We love you and thank you for being with us, and invite your Holy Spirit to guide us as we study your word today. In Jesus' name, amen. All righty. That song is it's connected to that teaching that I don't know. For me, it was 3 or 4 years ago that really, sometimes these teachings, they just hit in a new and a fresh way. So I don't remember if maybe that was connected to the time I was doing a lot of yard work, and yeah, it was. So the thing that got me is sometimes we use this analogy in the sense of like a gardener and grafting. And there are scriptures about us being grafted. And that would be similar to when we use the term adoption or something like that to describe us being joined to God's family. I don't know that, I think the grafting and the adoption analogies work okay. I don't know that they seem to make us kind of like, they can make us redheaded stepchildren. In a sense, they can make us kind of plan B or an afterthought or something like that. So I still like the I am a child analogy instead of an adopted child. I like the analogy of we're created as a branch, and we come out of the the center of the plant, the tree, the vine, and then the thought that really got me this last time is that thing of, if you're going to look at a vine and a branch or a tree and a branch, where does one begin and the other end? I don't know that, if you were to take, I don't know what you would need, a microscope and a scalpel or something. I mean, what would you do to find the spot that's like, okay, this cell is on the God side, and then this cell is on the me side? It's like that's not the way it works. So I think the analogy holds true that there's this connectedness, and the question for us is, I'm interested about that spot right where they're joined together, because I'm pretty sure I kind of know the outer branches part about me, and I know the God part about where the nutrients and the DNA and all that comes from. But what about this connecting part, and what's that all about? That's probably where faith comes in, and that's where our growing perceptions of our relationship with God come in. That's why we keep coming back to the Word to study that part of like, how are we connected with God, and what's that all about? So it's a great, I don't know, when I see that verse come up, or when I hear that song, I always kind of are brought back to that, something that feels good in my heart. We're going to continue with our study of the lectionary. I kind of, every time I use the lectionary, I feel like I need to give kind of this introduction to why did we choose this for today, right? So there are ways to study. You can go to the bookstore and you can buy books on a particular spiritual topic that's neatly parsed into chapters on breaking down what's important for your spiritual life and things like that. And most of the time, if you get a good book, it's just good beginning to end. It's just like, it's all meat, there's no bones and fat and grizzle. It's just the good stuff, right? So if you think about it, this Bible is put together over a period of, the estimates can go from, it took 600 years, it took 1,200 years. If it takes that long to put together a library, it's probably not going to be laid out like one of those books on spiritual development that's just neatly thought out on, this is all the meat for you. This is going to be, it's going to be kind of random in a way. And what's going to make each of these consistent and worthy of being in the library is that whatever these books have brought across stood the test of time as being kind of, these point to something that is deeply true and real. And it resonated from one generation to the next. Otherwise, it wouldn't have lasted. People would have lost interest in the book. It would have sat in a corner and gathered dust. But these books that made it in here, for one reason or another, they resonated with people from one generation to the next. Maybe it probably didn't resonate with everybody, especially if there's some things in there that may not sound like it's good news. Maybe it didn't resonate with the people receiving the bad news, but it resonated with the people that are learning from the lessons of the way other people have lived their lives, So when we come to the lectionary, in a way it's divided up. That's supposed to be a little more thought in the themes, and you can still see there are some themes that are weaved through the choices that we get each week, but sometimes it does feel a little bit random. So that's my disclaimer for this morning. The first one is taken from Hosea. We talked about Hosea last week. I think we talked enough about Hosea last week, so we're not going to dig any more into Hosea. Can I get an amen? Amen. So this is it's a continuation to talk about this judgment upon Israel and Judah, and how they were affected by Assyria and Babylon, and how at the end of the day, there's always in here, we would like for it to be more emphasized maybe, but there's always in here this reminder from God, you're still my children. You're still my children, even though this is going to be painful. This is going to hurt me more than it hurts you. You know, even though this is a painful experience of you being affected by and feeling judged and suffering consequences of actions, there's also in here some things that are, I don't think everything that Israel suffered was 100% because they were bad. I think it was more complicated than that. Just like it is in life, there are things that our kids that we raise, there are things that they suffer in life that are not 100% because they're good kids or bad kids. I mean, that's in there, and you're trying to teach them to make good choices and do the right thing. But some of the things that they experience in life, it doesn't have anything to do with them. It's outside circumstances that are beyond their control. You know, if mom and dad get laid off and the country goes into a recession and the family is in the place where they're suffering from those economic changes and all the stress that comes with it, just because the kids are going through a bad time doesn't mean you kids did the wrong thing. And if you had done the right thing, we wouldn't be in this mess. That's way too simple of an explanation for life. So hopefully when we read these prophetic words, we don't simplify it to God told Israel that they needed to follow the rules and they didn't follow the rules, and so this is what happened. Learned your lesson and don't be like Israel. That's not, there's some of that in there, but that's not the whole thing. The bigger picture is you're my children, and no matter what you go through, you're going to be okay. I'm going to be with you. My purposes are going to be come to fruition through you. In a sense, no matter what you do, you're my kids, and I'm going to do it through you. But it's not because of you that the kingdom comes on earth and God's will gets done. You know, we respond to God and we try to do the right thing and follow God, but ultimately we're a part of something God is doing, and we're kind of along for the ride. And if we tune into that and we understand how awesome that is, we can kind of enjoy it, even if it is a little bumpy sometimes. So that's Hosea. Let us go to the Psalms before we get to tackle Ecclesiastes today. Now, don't moan and groan, because Ecclesiastes doesn't have a great reputation, but I think there's a way for us to look at this and to still maybe come to some appreciation for how this ended up in the Bible. If you read articles about Ecclesiastes, when people ask, how did this book end up in the Bible? Because it seems like it's not that positive of a book. The answer that we get from a lot of scholars is, we don't know why it ended up in the Bible, but it must have resonated in some way enough for it to end up in the Bible. So before we do that, let's tackle or let's look at the Psalms. Let me see, maybe I can make that a little bigger for you. All right, Psalms 107 is where we're going to start today. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His steadfast love endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, those who redeemed from trouble, and gathered in from the lands, from the east and from the west, and from the north and from the south. Some wandered in desert wastes, finding no way to an inhabited town. Hungry and thirsty, their soul fainted within them. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. He led them by a straight way until they reached an inhabited town. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wonderful works to humankind, for he satisfies the thirsty and the hungry he fills with good things. Let those who are wise give heed to these things, and consider the steadfast love of the Lord. So that's one of our Psalms. You can see how this can get tied into this story of the people of Israel and Judah facing these devastations in their life, where they're a war-torn country. They become refugees, so they're going to be wandering. There's going to be people, like it says, scattered. The terms gathered and scattered are used throughout the Old Testament and some in the New Testament. And because it's really been a part of the history of the people of Israel for so long, it's kind of this theme that we see. So there's the scattering. So this is something that would happen like when Assyria came in and blew everything up. Everybody scattered. You're running for your life. So you go to the north, south, east, west. You're just getting away from all that. And then once things cool down, when the dust settles and when there's no more danger, then eventually some people make their way back, and that may take years or generations. Some people never come back, but it's this thing of being scattered. And so this word scattered is used in conjunction with some type of devastation or judgment. And there are sometimes in the prophets, you'll see them to threaten scattering. And what they're threatening is this: you're going to lose a home base. You're going to be in the wilderness. It's going to be a reminder of the stories of, this time period between Egypt and the Promised Land. They were wandering. They were kind of scattered with no home, and then eventually they have a home. And then you have these promises of God that is a gathering together. So it's coming home, and it's other people coming back home, and it's this coming together like we see at least for Judah. Judah comes back from Babylon, and they're gathered together, and sometimes you have others that would be gathering as well. And so that's gonna be a theme you see in many places in the scriptures. Another word that I would point out here is this term steadfast love. So this term steadfast love, I think, is usually the Hebrew word hesed or chesed, and it is covenant love. So it is the basis of a loving covenant relationship between God and God's people. And a covenant means this is the most serious and permanent and binding type of relationship that you can have, and that's God's relationship with God's people. It is an eternal covenant. It is a binding covenant. It is a life-giving covenant. It's a covenant that is we find security and purpose and direction in, and it's also something that is mentioned by the prophets throughout the scriptures. Usually the problem that the people are going through is that they're not abiding by the covenant. There are certain expectations and agreements that you enter into in a covenant relationship, just like we do. A marriage is called a covenant relationship. So it's a relationship based on promises, binding promises. We promise this, and then we lay out the expectations of the parties, but then along the way there are these constant reminders that we need to steer our personal lives this way or that way to stay in healthy covenant relationship. So anytime you see that word, steadfast love, sometimes the word that's used is loving kindness. That's like, I think, maybe in the King James Version. So anytime you see loving kindness or steadfast love, it's this word that talks about this binding covenant relationship. And that's why even when Israel is scattered, even when they face judgment, even when it looks like it's the end of the day, they are in covenant relationship with God, and that cannot be broken. And God's promises will stand the test of time, and that's what we're invited to. And this is there are kind of covenant renewals along the way. It's kind of a reminder of the covenant. It doesn't change the essential nature of the covenant, but it's kind of it's a better understanding of the covenant relationship. So like in Jeremiah, the prophet talks about where God says, I'm going to create a new covenant with you. And it's that Jeremiah text that gets referred to with the early church, when the early church sees the outpouring of the Holy Spirit and sees the Gentiles start to come to become the people of God. That's when God says there's this new covenant that the older one did not include everybody else. It just included this special family of people. Now with the new covenant, it's open to others. The foundations of the covenant are the same. The God and expectations are the same, but now there's more people that are invited to this steadfast love or this loving kindness. And so those are some good maybe takeaways from the psalm reading, and just some clues to look for: steadfast love, loving kindness, and also gathering and scattering. Those are themes that you see throughout the scriptures. All right, are we nice and warmed up and ready for Ecclesiastes? All right. I heard that. All right, so this is not Ecclesiastes for the lectionary reading is not all the verses, and that's relatively common. Sometimes in the lectionary, it'll take out some parts in order to narrow down the theme that gets studied here. So it's Ecclesiastes 1 and verses 2, 12, 13, and 14. And then it's Ecclesiastes 2, verses 18 through 23. The Ecclesiastes begins with this kind of introductory poem that is the kind of the overview or the main point of the book, one of the kind of main points of the book, and then it gets into details a little bit later on. It is said to be written by a king. Traditionally, this has been attributed to King Solomon. In the text, I believe the name of the king is given, and it's Koheleth or something like that. I don't think we see it in this particular reading, but it's the name of a king who's basically giving his wise take on life as he has experienced it. And it looks like that this king is not a young king. This is a king or an individual that has been around, has been in the thick and thin of things, and somebody who has weathered the storms of life, and this is their takeaway from life. Now, a lot of translations of this text here use this term vanity. And you may be familiar with that, vanity of vanities. And if you look at the Hebrew word, the root of that word, I believe, is similar to the word vapor. That's kind of the literal take on that word. Vanity maybe sounds a little more poetic, so that's the English word that gets chosen for that. And vapor is meant to be kind of this analogy of life is like a vapor. Now, that from its initial take does not inspire, hey, life's going to be fun, life's going to be meaningful, life's going to be full of purpose. A vapor is something, like fog, like steam, and pardon me? Evaporates. It kind of comes up from nowhere and then it's gone. So it's something that comes and goes. It comes and goes. So that's the word that's used, and what's in its place is vanity. Now that's not, if you know how English words, they kind of had different connotations. Words can mean a variety of things, and a lot of times one generation to the next emphasizes some particular part of the word over others. So when we think of vanity, we think like, Vanity Fair. We think of this, maybe it's opulence and it's style. It is, if you're a vain person, who sings the song "You're So Vain"? Carlos, you're so vain. You probably think this song is about you, right? So that's vanity, right? To us, to our modern minds. But vanity in this sense is not like that. It's not like this show-off, narcissist, self-centered way of living life that is being talked about here. What's being talked about here is this: life is a mystery. Life, we seem to understand it, and then we don't. Life is nothing in particular seems to be going on, and suddenly something appears, and it's like, oh, I get it, and then it's gone. So it eludes us. So it's like the cycles that we go through in life. And I remember realizing this as a young person, is like I can kind of feel my life going through these cycles. It's like you got a couple good years and everything's going great, and then it's like, everything starts falling apart, and then things are bad, and you go through the dark times, but then you come out of the dark times and you learn and you grow, and hey, things start to get good, and what do you know, that's not lasting. Oh no, here we go again. So I remember thinking, like, I'm seeing a pattern here, and then there is the whole thing of we got this in a new way when we moved up to Michigan. Now, I grew up in the South, so the northern weather cycles were not something I was used to. But a couple years into it, it's like, summer's here. You get outside when the sun comes up, and you go outside and you enjoy the fresh air and the sunshine and the green grass, and you get in the water and you play and you keep going all the way down till sunset, and then you sleep real good, and then you get up and you do it again. And you are living life as best you can, and then you get a couple cold days and you're like, oh crap, here it comes. Here it comes. Oh no, here it comes. So that's almost the way of these cycles of life, where you're like, man, it's been a good couple years. It's been so good, and I haven't even thought about it. I wonder if something's around the corner. You know what I mean? Don't say that. Maybe it's the one time that it's not going to happen. But that's kind of this thing of the vapor thing. It's like it comes and it goes, and it comes and it goes.
Yeah, I tell my kids, they're 19 and 16,
Mm-hmm.
I tell them life is a roller coaster.
Right.
There are ups and downs, kiddos.
Yep.
And the downs, you just got to take it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's okay.
And it'll be okay. That's what we learn.
And it'll
Right.
still always be okay.
Right. That's the peace that passes understanding. That's the a rootedness and faith that we hopefully it will be through good times and bad times. We try not to be cynical and sarcastic. So this can be a takeaway from Ecclesiastes. It has a reputation for being a sarcastic, cynical book. And if we have become cynical or sarcastic, guilty as charged, in life, when we read this, we can read it in a sarcastic or cynical fashion. I don't know, upon closer look over the years, I don't know that that's what is intended to be, though. And so when we say vanity, I wonder if the word that's used here when we say vapor is a somewhat neutral term. When we say vapor, there's nothing inherently good or bad about vapor. I mean, it can have a good connotation. That means you're cooking something yummy you're going to eat. Maybe it's not so great, because if you see the vapor coming out of the manhole cover, then the cold weather's coming, or I don't know. But in essence, vapor itself is not. It's just what it is. It's not that it's a good thing or a bad thing. So maybe that's what this is to be. Some translations, I believe I've seen some English translations of this, and it just says meaningless. And
That's what mine says.
it says meaningless.
Meaningless.
Everything is meaningless.
Yep.
So
teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless.
right. So let's go through this, and let's try as much as possible, just momentarily, let's try our best to take this word vanity or meaningless. Let's maybe exchange it for vapor. Let's when we see this word, let's think of something that's neutral, and then we'll talk about it a little bit more. So these are words where a person is trying to by the end of their life, after being around for a while, they're trying to say, this is what life is like. This is what life seems to be like. All right. Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, says the teacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. I, the teacher, when king over Israel in Jerusalem, applied my mind to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to human beings to be busy with. I saw all the deeds that are done under the sun, and see all is vanity and a chasing after wind. I hated all my toil in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to those who come after me. And who knows whether they will be wise or foolish? Yet they will be master of all, for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned and gave my heart up to despair concerning all the toil of the labors under the sun, because sometimes one who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave all to be enjoyed by another who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What do mortals get from all the toil and strain with which they toil under the sun? For all their days are full of pain, and their work is a vexation. Even at night their minds do not rest. This also is vanity. Woo! All right, so what are the things that stand out here? Because there's a lot of repetition. There's a lot of repetition here. What stands out here?
All for naught.
All for naught. Okay. So there's this sense of we wanted something achievable, attainable, tangible, permanent. Those are the things that we end up working hard for.
And whoever comes after us gets it for nothing.
Right. So maybe they receive some good stuff. You know, maybe they you know, in your will, you leave them a head start, and so they get some of that stuff. On the other hand, maybe they end up basically having to do what you did and I did, and that is you got to do some hard work and face the trials of life too.
Toiling for? Are you toiling for yourself, or for others, or for God?
Yes.
It's a good question. Yes, the answer is yes. Sometimes it's for me, sometimes it's for others, sometimes it's for God. Maybe sometimes it's a combination.
Sometimes you're not sure.
Sometimes you're not sure. Why am I working? I don't know.
And vexation. My
Vexation.
girlfriend used to say, I'm not dealing with that person. They are vexation to my soul.
Ah, uh-huh. So what is that like? They're not a help. They're a hindrance.
Exactly, they're a hindrance.
They're a constant negativity. Mm-hmm. They don't go away. Vexes don't go away. You have to learn to deal with them or ignore them or run away from them or.
Also, would it be that I'm doing all this work as in vanity? I want you to notice me and to be more honored.
Mm-hmm. He wants more out of his work, for sure. And seems like at the end of the day, what he was hoping to get out of this work is nothing, or it's not enough, or it's.
No one said anything.
Yeah, I didn't get recognized. Yeah, my kids, the next generation's not going to have any kind of appreciation for this, and I'm sure every generation feels that way. I'm sure the one that came before us thought that about us. Oh, you're going to be receiving, and you're not even going to appreciate it. And once you're around for a while, you realize, if I didn't work for it, I probably don't appreciate it.
May I read something from
Yeah, sure.
the book's honest and blunt appraisal of the human condition provides a healthy corrective to the occasional excessive self-assurance of other wisdom writers. Its radical skepticism is somewhat tempered by the resigned conclusions to rejoice in whatever gifts God may give.
That's good.
Nice little song.
So this is considered to be somewhat of a balance toward the other wisdom literature. You know, a lot of if you read Psalms, if you read Proverbs more than Psalms, there's some in Psalms, but in Proverbs, it's like it's these folks that have been around and they got it figured out, and they're basically telling everybody, all the students, this is how you need to live, period. And if you do it right, you're going to achieve good stuff. You're going to receive good stuff. And if you do it wrong, you're going to receive bad stuff. So do the right thing. And that's kind of how, and it is presented sometimes in a very black and white way, where it's like, if you do the right thing, you will receive blessings. If you do the wrong thing, you will receive curses. That's kind of an introduction to the book of Deuteronomy. It's, I lay before you blessings and curses. I lay before you the choices of life and death. And then he gives the whole law of Deuteronomy, which is the covenant laws of God. These are the expectations for my people. Love one another. Take care of one another. Don't steal and lie and kill each other. You know, and then all the other things. And it's like, and if you do these things, you're going to live a good life. And if you don't do these good things, you're going to live, or if you don't do these things, you're going to live a bad life. This balance comes along and says, sometimes you do all the good stuff and you get dumped on. Sometimes you do all the good stuff and it doesn't work out the way you thought. Sometimes you may find I was toiling and I was doing the right thing, but maybe I was doing it with the wrong heart. Maybe I really wasn't doing it to be a help to others, or I really wasn't doing it because I'm grateful to God. I was doing it because I wanted something, because I deserved something, because nobody asked me to be here, and so I'm going to take whatever I need to take in this life, because if I don't take it, nobody's going to give it to me. You know, so there's different ways to toil.
Now, with that attitude that you just expressed, what if they lose their faith and don't care?
That happens a lot, all the time. And one of the reasons why, oftentimes when you hear people's testimony of their loss of faith, it is because these were the expectations and the rules that were laid out before me. These are the rights and the wrongs that I was taught. I played by the rules, and then I didn't get treated fairly. I quit. So that's kind of what that's the whole book of Job. The whole book of Job is like, I did what you asked.
But
I did the right thing. And look what happened to me. You know? And so all of his friends come in and they argue from different angles to Job, and they say, Job, you did something wrong. You definitely did something wrong, because if you didn't do anything wrong, this wouldn't have happened to you. And so they say, let's analyze this. Let's think about this. Did you do it in the right spirit, with the right heart? You did something, Job. So that's kind of the takeaway, is that the theology of the day and the wisdom of the day was, if you followed the tenets of God, you would be blessed. And if you did not follow the tenets of God, you would be cursed. Job was cursed. So therefore, he did something wrong. And there are folks that read Job and come away with that and say, actually, Job did do something wrong. The Bible never says Job did anything wrong. The only thing, if Job did anything wrong, was that he didn't fully trust in God. He questioned God. And he was building his case against God. He was building his case to show God, look, God, these are the rules you gave. This is my track record. What did you do, God? Not what did I do. What did you do?
The age-old question is people who are, let's say, are really good people that wind up with cancer, or they wind up with COVID. That's the whole problem.
Exactly. It's the problem of evil. And it's like, one of the explanations of evil is, evil comes from sowing and reaping. And if you sow good, you reap good. And if you sow bad, you reap bad. And so if you have cancer, if you have any physical ailment, if you have trouble in your relationships, if you don't have success at your job, if you find yourself not happy with life, that's on you. That's your fault. You must have not done things the right way. So Ecclesiastes comes in and essentially is saying, it's more nuanced than that. It's more complex than that. And he's saying, it's not always the way it seems. Sometimes you work hard and you don't receive the benefits of the hard work. Sometimes, you try to live by wisdom and you try to teach wisdom, and then the next generation doesn't even get it. So even when we do things the right way, we still die, and we still get sick, and we still have problems. So why are we doing it then? Or what's the point then? If the thing is meaninglessness or vapor, what we're looking for is, we want the answer that is provable, that we can defend, and that we can fight with, and we can say that's the answer. And what he's saying is, sometimes we don't know what the answer is.
But sometimes if you don't experience the bad things in life, you'll never really learn to appreciate the really good things in life.
Right.
Because if everything is good in your life, it's just kind of like, oh, another perfect day. Wow.
So that's one of the things I remember I remember at a young age trying to make sense of my mother dying when I was 15 years old. And she was a good person, and she died of lung cancer, and she never smoked a cigarette in her life. Who knows, maybe there was all the asbestos and everything around back in the 40s and 50s. So, maybe it was that. But the thing is, as far as I was concerned, my mom was a loving, happy, cheerful person that couldn't do anything wrong. And why can't she even get past, she was 40 years old when she died. So So what sense does that make? And one of the things that I came across was, well, there are some benefits and lessons and wisdom that I have gained that I would not have gained without that. But then I go back and say, but did she really have to die for that? I mean, I don't know if I were going to go and exchange that. Hey, would you like all this wisdom? All you have to do is let your loved one die, and then you can have it. I mean, nobody's going to sign up for that. Nobody's going to be like, well, you know best, God, and I really do want to be wise, and I do really want to grow in my faith. So if you could just let a few people die around me, at least I can have a better faith. I mean, that's when I say that's vanity. That's meaningless. That doesn't work. And then going down the whole, like, did she do something wrong? Did I do something wrong? That's the question that the disciples asked Jesus when they saw one of the blind people, and they said, who sinned? Was it him or was it his parents? So there's got to be some explanation for this. Why would a kid be born blind and have to live their whole life as a beggar? Somebody must have done something real bad for that to happen. And the thing is, Jesus said it wasn't that. Now he turns around and says, this is here so that God can be glorified. So we can exchange it and say, well, it wasn't because somebody did something wrong. It's because God needs to have this glory. Well, it's like, then you go back and you're like, I mean, it was nice to get my sight back, but did I really have to be a blind beggar for almost my whole life? I mean, was the exchange worth it? And then it's kind of like, that doesn't make sense. That's not that meaningful. So we try to make sense, but anything that we come up with to make sense is, it's okay, but it doesn't really, it's not a 100% answer. And so that's what the teacher here in Ecclesiastes is saying is, no matter what wise answer you have for the meaning of life, no matter what you figured out and applied to your life and passed on to other people, nothing is wise enough for you to have no questions or doubts about it.
So my background as a research scientist for 40 years and talking to atheists in science, most
Sure.
of the academic people they give up on God for the reasons that you just mentioned. They dismiss him because,
There's not enough evidence.
Why do these kids get killed? Why does somebody have lung cancer and die?
Right. All of that is viewed as evidence to the contrary.
Yeah.
It's that's more of a support of the hypothesis that there isn't a God.
Yeah.
So there's an acknowledgement here that of understanding that is, it doesn't fully make sense. So this is the strange thing about faith is that there's a phrase we came across recently: non-rational certainty. Faith is non-rational certainty. So it is. Faith is not ignorance, because faith can be misconstrued as ignorance, where someone chooses to be ignorant. Ignorance is bliss. So I prefer to have faith or ignorance to go through life. You're ignoring the evidence, and you're ignoring, and the person writing Ecclesiastes would say, I have a very clear understanding of the evidence that's presented here. And this doesn't mean a person doesn't have faith just because they look at these things. Does that mean they have an answer? No. A person of faith who really is of faith does not have an answer, because there is not an answer. Because faith does not demand an answer. Reason demands an answer, and the scientific process demands an answer. You need evidence to support your hypothesis. That's the whole scientific method. And it will get you going. It will get you places. It will help you learn more. But there's always going to be another question that you don't have answers for. Now, if we engage in the scientific method, we'll just say, well, eventually we'll figure it out, eventually. And the philosopher will say, it appears in this life, I mean, we're never going to know that because you're going to need an infinite amount of evidence to be convinced. And there seems to be an infinite amount of mystery that needs evidence for. So it is vanity. It is meaningless. There are things that we don't know and cannot know and may never know. But that doesn't mean we have to get to a place where we don't accept that. Now, acceptance can sound like a cop-out, and it can sound like a giving up. But acceptance seems to me to be kind of the place where faith is alive. It is acceptance. It is, and it is against human nature because we're programmed in a way that we fight against that because that seems to be what makes us live. You have to fight against hunger. So you go eat something and you fight against the elements, so you build a house, and you fight against isolation, so you build a family. So it's always a fight and it's always a challenge. But what you find as you're getting older is like, oh my gosh, it never quits. It's like there's always something new. And so what is the point? When do we arrive? And the thing is, like, there's this mystery to life and this mystery to God that is, it's almost like you're not going to figure it out because the only way a finite mind can understand the infinite is for the finite mind to be infinite. We cannot comprehend the infinite or the unknowable if we're limited by this. The only thing that we have that I can gather is acceptance. And I think you can have meaninglessness or vanity or the unknown, and you can have acceptance. I have hope. This is where I've arrived in my faith journey. I have hope in eternal life, and I have hope in eternal love, and I don't have any proof. I have promises, and I have hope, and I really, really, really want it to be that way.
Me too.
But I cannot prove it. And I would be lying to you if I had the proof. And if somebody had the proof and they gave it to you, either they didn't really know what they were talking about, or they were trying to sell you something, because nobody knows. We can have evidence of stories of people who have gone to that place and come back and they're like, hey, I was there. But were you really? So that's the thing, is like, we can have very real experiences, but it's like, does my very real experience make it true? Does it make you 100% true? Pardon me?
Don't you think everybody in the world has a different concept of Jesus?
Yeah, we have a different concept of everything, and we share some commonalities with each other, but there are some kind of some differences. But that doesn't mean, I think I'm at a place where I can accept that I don't know the answer. And I can accept that I'm hopeful and I want it to happen, but I think I can be okay if I don't have the proof and the assurance of knowing before it happens.
Exactly. It's like you're preaching, and there's some people that aren't Christians, but And then I always explained it, our Christian walk is not a head thing, it's a heart thing. You're never gonna be able to figure it out. And it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
But it's in your heart.
Right.
You know, the questions are not answered.
Right.
Things happen that shouldn't happen.
There are some things that are logical and do make sense. I mean, I think a logical person knows that if you approach life kind of in a positive way, in a loving and a compassionate way, you're probably going to be happier. So, I mean, there's kind of evidence for that, and that makes sense to the mind. But when we dig into these deeper meaning of life things, you just go in with your gut. Like you said, it's a heart thing. I don't have the evidence. And I think that's what the writer here is saying. And you were going to say something now?
Well, I was going to say that there are a couple of comments. First of all, Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate of the masses.
Mm-hmm.
However, this guy never sat at a microscope for 50 years looking at living cells, looking at when the sperm hits the egg and
Right.
the moment of conception, to see life in that cell split.
Mm-hmm.
For me to look at that for 50 years of all different things, pathology,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you really, really have something. The mystery of faith is really inside you.
Right.
And moreover, and lastly, when you see the show that I have about the Shroud of Turin,
Mm-hmm.
and what they've made a three-dimensional representation from that shroud,
Mm-hmm.
they made a bronze statue of Jesus
Mm-hmm.
laying in repose. It's incredible. It makes you look through different eyes.
Right.
It really does when you come back.
And those experiences, they do inspire awe.
Oh,
And
yes.
and they inspire. I think they make us lean into acceptance and lean into to lean into our faith. Now you can, I mean, anybody can be the eternal skeptic and say, I need more, and you can forever be needing more, because that's kind of isn't that kind of part of the whole nature of the scientific method, is there's always going to be more. I mean, there's always going to be more, because we're always trying to continue to build on our conclusions and to even question our conclusions so that we can make sure that they are the right conclusions. And then somebody comes along and they find something brand new that kind of messes up our conclusions.
There is no doubt that Jesus Christ existed. We have proof all over.
Mm-hmm.
The question remains, was Jesus Christ the Son of God?
Right.
That's the whole question.
Sure.
But then, it's like, how can you not believe with all the proof that he left
Mm-hmm.
and the miracles? How can you not?
Right. Well, I think what we're left with at the end of the day is we will have proof, evidence that can contribute to our faith. But ultimately we have to acknowledge that it is not, my relationship with God is not based on proof. It's more based on the awe and the inspiration that the evidence gives to me, which ultimately leads me to acceptance. And part of accepting it is accepting that there's a whole lot that I have not figured out that is yet to come. The writer here is leaning away from those certainties that the other wisdom writers were providing. The other wisdom writers would say, I have proof that living a wise life is better. And I have all these examples of all these people that lived wise lives and these that lived foolish lives. And look at how things ended up. What more evidence do you need? And this person will come up and say, well, that looks nice and clean, but I have some examples of people that aren't just easily lumped into the wise or the foolish. In fact, maybe there's a whole lot more in this middle of how many of us would say we lived 100% wise or 100% foolish lives. We say, well, I wasn't 100% foolish, but almost all of us have this kind of a mixture within us of like, I've got a certain amount of proof, and then I've got a certain amount of doubt, and I don't know. So, I mean, let's look at this. There does seem to be. He talks about that there's this regret for the hard work, right? And there seems to be it's almost like he expected too much from the hard work of life, because he hated it so much. This is what he said. I hated the toil, and I hated under the sun, and seeing that he has to, the work's not done. He didn't finish the work, so now somebody else has to do the work, and then they're going to be in the same boat. I mean, why can't life be easy? Why does it have to be hard? So I'm sure, I mean, we go through days where we're like, I'm just sick and tired of this, whatever this part of life is, I'm just sick and tired of the hard work, the exhaustion, the effort. I'm just sick of it. I'm tired of it. I hate it, Well, I don't want to be negative about it, so I'll try to stay positive. But I mean, if I'm honest with myself, there's part of it that I'm just like, I'm tired. So that's kind of where he's at. And he's saying, like, I wish I just had certainty, 100% certainty, and 100% guarantees, and I don't have it. So since I don't have it, then it is a vapor. It's not 100% fully there and tangible. Now, all of the religion and the spiritual life has been about this from the beginning, and that is, it is not something we can control. It is not something we can 100% understand. It is about kind of being led in the mysterious way toward we hope is a good place. But along the way, there are a lot of questions and a lot of doubts, and there are struggles. And sometimes we overcome those things, and sometimes we learn from those things and grow from those things. And sometimes those things still linger there. So the thing that he's coming away with, there's not 100% certainty and a guaranteed verifiable meaning that is without doubt. That does not exist. That doesn't exist. So
Everything in life is that way.
So if he were to be putting himself against other wisdom teachers, what he would essentially say is they are making guarantees, and they are saying there is 100% meaning, and they're not either being 100% truthful or honest or aware of the situation. It's not that black and white. Now, the reason for part of this is that this is kind of the nature of human development, is we start with black and white, and we start with oversimplification. I remember experiencing this like in English classes that I took. You would learn these grammar rules in like 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade, right? And then later on, in middle school and high school, it's like, oh, by the way, there's more exceptions to the rule than we told you about back then. Same with math. It's real simple. You add, you subtract, you multiply, you divide. It's that simple. And then as you get on going with math, it's like, oh, it's a little more complicated than that. And there's some things we're not certain about, by the way. Like, I love the whole thing of like, if you're moving from 1 to 0, why is it that you can never get there by like dividing that number in half? You keep dividing in half, so you should be getting closer, but you're never going to get there because it's infinitely can't get to zero. That's a mystery of life that you can't, there's no simple answers to that, right? So we grow in that way where it's like we're told in black and white terms, we're given simple answers. We say things like, everything I learned about life, I learned or needed to learn about life, I learned in kindergarten. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some truth to that, but you know what? There's also a big fat lie about that too, because there's some things you can't handle in kindergarten. And it's going to take you a long, long time before we can face you with some of these problems of life that can't simply be figured out. So that's where this person is. And I think the reason why this book is in here is that there's a certain honesty and reality in this kind of check to wisdom that we don't get with the other ones. Now, isn't it nice? It's nice to go and hear a motivational speech from somebody on some topic about life and come away with, it's so good to have an answer. I'm going to apply what I just learned and I'm going to make my life better. And you do, and we do. Whatever that is that we learn, we come away with it, we apply it, and then life is better. And then guess what? It wasn't the answer.
Yeah.
It was a little answer.
It was an exception.
It was an exception, right? So wisdom literature is tackling the question. The question. Everything else is the little questions. It's this whole, does God exist? Is there life beyond this? Why am I here? What is the meaning of all this? There's a book, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. What's the meaning of life? What's the answer to life? 42.
42.
That was the answer to life that they come up with. That's about how much sense it makes. There are, I think our time is, oh yeah, we went over quite a bit.
But it was so good.
Oh, good. What do you know? Ecclesiastes gave us something. Now, if you want another head scratcher here, it's interesting when you look at scholars' opinions on the last few verses of Ecclesiastes. What they'll tell you is a lot of scholars believe that those few verses were added at the end by somebody else much later. Because what happens is you go through all this, life is meaningless, blah, 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 and then finally you get to the last two verses and it's like, but if you follow God, it's all worth it. So it kind of doesn't fit the whole rest of the book. Now, somebody obviously wanted, after reading this thing, they're like, come on, we gotta let people go home with something good, so let's at least throw in a verse or two for it to make sense. But for me, I think it is acceptance. I mean, in the stages of grief, we're trying to reach acceptance. And it doesn't mean that you have it all figured out. And it doesn't mean that it makes sense. And it doesn't mean that everything is resolved. It simply means I've come to a place where I will accept this. And it is the hardest in life to get to the place of acceptance. But I think we can read Ecclesiastes and we can agree with what he's saying. Yeah, he's right. And I can be okay with that. Why? Because God's bigger than that. Because there seems to be something drawing me in my heart into this universe that makes me want to be a part of it, even though it's hard, even though I haven't figured it out. It's got my curiosity piqued in between exhaustion, right? So I like the fearlessness of this. I think, yes, it can be viewed as, and if you get in there, and you read it, maybe if you read it all in one sitting, it's going to be too heavy and it's going to feel cynical and sarcastic. But I think with bits and pieces, I think it maybe enriches our experience of life because it helps us to be honest with life, and that's going to help us to accept a little bit more. So Colossians talks about being raised with Christ. Your life is hidden with Christ in God. This is acceptance. Now, I love this word. This is a mysterious word. Your life is hidden with Christ in God. So you're connected with God, but is it a clear cut and meaningful? No, it's hidden. Your life's hidden in Christ with God, and that's okay. That's okay. Your life is hidden with Christ in God. That's a Colossians 3:3. That's something you can sit and just meditate on over and over and over again.
I'd be curious what some of the other translations for hidden would be, because there's a lot going on there.
Mm-hmm. And then we have Jesus is talking about, it's a parable about a rich man. He produced abundantly, and then it's like he had so much abundance that he decided, I'm going to tear down my barns and I'm going to build barns bigger so they can hold all my stuff. And then God said to him, you fool, your life is over now. So his barns were torn down and all of his stuff is laying out all over the place. And the writer of Ecclesiastes would be like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. It's all meaningless. We try to hold on to and we try to get the answers, and then whew, it's a vapor.
I just wish Jesus was not so serious a person. There's no happiness, there's no laughter.
If you watch the new series, The Chosen, it's a mini series about the teaching of Jesus, and the characterization that they give of Jesus is a pretty lighthearted kind of guy. Yeah, he would teach these hard sayings, but then he would kind of do it in a way with a smile on his face, and it's like,
Oh, I'd love to see that.
From what I understand about Jesus, we to him, very slim, but it could be, nobody knows. Like he was like a jolly monk. And in those days, there weren't any restaurants, so he went from home to home, and they would laugh and eat, make merry. He wasn't always sad. He was a happy person.
Well, that's what.
Party, but that was because his mother made him.
Well, that's what he was accused of. He was accused by the religious people of not being serious enough. He was accused by the religious people of not being, you need to fast and you need to follow the rules and you need to do the right thing and you need to be serious. And Jesus was like, I've come here to celebrate and I've come here to be with people and for us to spend time together. And so, that's why they called him a party animal, basically. They said they called him a glutton and they said he hung out with sinners. So
That's always fun.
yeah, he was a party animal. He just
Absolutely.
and in the meantime, he would teach us with these things that would just knock the wind out of us. All right. Send us out in the power of your Spirit, Lord. Hold on just a minute. Let me stop this.
Come on now.
All right. Send us out in the power of your Spirit, Lord. May our lives bring Jesus to the world. May each thought and word bring glory to your name. Send us out in your Spirit, Lord, we pray. Send us out in the power of your Spirit, Lord. May our lives bring Jesus to the world. May each thought and word bring glory to your name. Send us out in your Spirit.